Gore Club Podcast. This is the Gore Club Podcast with Steve Vessel, Ace, and Death Metal Dave.
Yeah, Steve.
Yeah. Welcome to the Gore Club Podcast, everybody. I'm Steve Vessel.
Death Metal Dave.
I'm Ace.
And Ace. And tonight we have a fantastic guest for you guys. And we're going to do an entire episode on horror art. But please introduce yourself.
I'm Nathan Thomas Milliner.
Thank you.
Yeah. You're welcome.
That was fucking great. I love it. Oh, shit. So, dude, you have as much knowledge and way more knowledge than I do when it comes to horror art, and especially your background. And can you tell us a little bit about that? Or everything?
I don't know if I know that much about horror art.
Fuck off.
Yeah, I've been drawing since I was about 5 years old, and just always drew. And I was kind of self-taught. I didn't really go to school or anything for it. I just basically drew whatever I was into. You know, the benefit of growing up in the 80s when, you know, there was a lot to be inspired by. You know, Star Wars and G.I. Joe and Transformers, all that shit. And horror came to me a little late. When I was 12, I saw the Elm Street films and fell in love. Actually, I think it was more of the movie you love. I know, Return of the Living Dead. Mm-hmm. My dad and I stayed up one night and watched that around 87 or so on cable, and just had a hoot with it. Of course, at the end, and it's like Louisville, Kentucky, and we had, you know, laughed again. The funniest part of that story, though, is that right after Andrew Dice Clay came on.
Oh shit!
And like my dad had no idea who that guy was, and you know I was 87, so I was 11.
Oh, welcome to us.
And you know it's to show that the first line is, so I got my tongue up this chick's ass.
You're like, oh, nursery rhymes. This will be good for a child.
Oh yeah, that's great.
And my dad is like, well, too late now. So we watched it.
He just let you watch the whole fucking thing.
He gave up quick, didn't he? One curse word and be like, well, he's ruined.
Oh, fuck.
And I've just been downhill since.
That's a great story. Return of the Living Dead, Andrew Dice Clay. Yeah. Oh my God.
You got it all that one night.
Yeah, Little Boy Blue. He needed the money. Oh my God. I watched those on television and I should not have. But my mom was letting me watch awful shit. It was my babysitter. It's like in Scrooge, it's like, yeah. Frankie Angel. I'm Frankie Angel.
I think a lot of us were that. Definitely watched a lot of television, a lot of films, and that was where my love came. I got into comics. I mean, everything was usually propelled by a movie. The very next year, Batman comes out, so all of a sudden now I want to be a comic book artist, and that was where I focused for like the next 20 years, until I picked up an issue of Horror Hound magazine. And wrote Nate Hanneman, and 2 years later, I'm like a staff artist. And then, you know, I still love comics, but it's a whole lot of work.
Man, see, I was gonna say you started out as a comic book artist, right?
Yeah.
Or is it after that? Because I went on your website when we first met, and this was a long time ago. I want to say 2008. I don't know if it was. It might have been. Did you set up at the Fright Night Film Festival, the first one? 2006?
I wasn't the very first one, but I did the 2008 one.
Okay, that might be it. And I'd come to your table and I was like, oh yeah, fucking hell yeah, this is awesome. Then I went to your website, and I went to it recently, and you need to update that, by the way.
I haven't touched it in years.
I was just like, nothing's working.
I've been really lazy on that. I haven't touched it in probably 5 years, and it's I don't know. I've been so busy with doing commercial work that I just don't bother with the.
There are worse things.
There are worse things that have a problem.
No, no, there's like none of the tabs are working. It's like, the thing you're looking for is not there.
Yeah. Well, you can be prepared for me to ask you a question that's 5 years old.
Well, I mean, actually, you know what, Ace, you can ask the first question.
One of the first things I wrote down was big thing for me growing up was like walking through the video store and seeing all the art on all the VHS covers, and that was what originally drew me to like horror movies and stuff, was just seeing all the great artwork, as you can see in this room.
Oh, yeah. It's like album covers and VHS covers.
Yeah. Like I would see like Cannibal Corpse album cover, and I was like, I have to listen to this album.
Vincent Locke.
Yeah. Stuff like that. But one of the first things I wrote down was like, was there any like particular like like for me, like a cover of a box or like a poster or something where you were just like, I need to do this. Like, this is my calling to like draw.
Well, I think my favorite poster is Matthew Peake's Nightmare on Elm Street poster.
Oh, yeah.
And the whole series he did.
Yeah, they're great.
They're all beautiful.
You did the first 4 or 5?
First 5.
Yeah, okay.
But yeah, I agree. Like, I was just thinking as you're saying that, like, there's nowhere we can go other than, half-price books or places like that where you could see this stuff, like the magic that was of going in a VHS store and just being surrounded by beautiful images. There's nowhere like that now.
Yeah, just the art was just being surrounded by all that.
Amazing images that, I mean, just seeing like the Evil Dead. I mean, you would see a film just by looking at it. It was just, that's what you want. I was very happy to finally get that job to do. Never thought it was going to come because by the time I got in there, studios weren't hiring artists anymore. It was all Photoshop and images.
Floating heads.
The floating heads. The Scream syndrome.
Yeah, the Scream.
Phantoms, man. Phantoms, eat the bomb.
I guess Ben Affleck's in it, I guess. I don't
No
know what it's
shit.
about. He's wearing a black T-shirt, I guess.
That was a selling point. They didn't understand how good the fucking art was and how it drew children in who probably shouldn't see that movie.
Oh, yeah.
I'm just saying.
I mean, I knew the cover art of Breakfast Club as Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2.
Right? So you did the opposite.
Yeah, the reverse. That's
Yeah.
because I always saw that poster hanging up at the video store, and then I was like, oh shit, it's the same thing, but not really.
Yeah. There was just so
For
much to, I mean, going to the horror section. I was a late starter with it, but I remember seeing stuff out of the corner of my eye and not wanting to go down that aisle because some of the images were really creepy. I remember like the headless eyes cover or something like, holy shit, what is that? Like, I don't want to see, like the crawling eyes or whatever, it was eyeballs crawling on the ground or whatever. Like, what the hell is that? And then Blood Beach, the girl getting sucked down.
Fantastic movie.
Just images.
Dave loves it.
Oh, and The Company of Wolves scared the shit out
Oh
of me.
my God,
That's
one was
my
perfect.
God. I cannot remember who did that one.
I don't know who the artist
I should have
is.
looked that up beforehand because it's one of those ones. Did you? Yeah, you look it up, please.
Oh yeah, I saw that when I was like a little kid. I was like, I saw it and it has the mouth coming out, and I was like, oh my God, I don't know. I was like, 10 years old. I was like, I don't know if I'm ready to watch this or not. This is insane.
You've got the ones like you're talking about in the Nightmare on Elm Street ones, which it's a piece of art. It's gorgeous. But then you have ones like that, or even The Howling when I was a kid. I couldn't tell if it was a photograph or a piece of art. Like
Yeah.
Company of Wolves is one of those. I was like, how the fuck did they do that?
Yeah.
Yeah.
What do I know?
I mean,
I was 4.
The genre has so many, like, I Spit on Your Grave is such a fucking great cover. It's a photograph, but it's like, it's
Demi Moore's ass. It's Demi Moore's ass.
But yeah, there's the Howling. I love the Howling, original Howling cover. What are some others? I mean, there's just the Return of the Living Dead is a great painting.
Oh my God.
Ramsey's painting, and there were just so many great artists, and they were hiring these guys who were known for other things, doing other commercial art or men's magazines, adventure magazines.
Oh, yeah, like the Dad's Little Go-Go's.
And
exactly.
you get Jack Davis doing movie posters and shit. I mean, it was so cool. Frank Frazetta and who else? There's so many good ones.
Oh, I can go on.
Oh, I know we can go on. Of course, Drew Struzan.
Yeah, everyone knows Drew Struzan. If you don't, when you're talking about, it's the guy who, if you Back to the Future, Raiders of the Lost Ark, or he'll even do like B versions of them that you might not see at the theater, but you'll see it on a VHS box or a freaking lunchbox. That guy's amazing. Sorry.
Yeah. And then you got the Italian, like Enzo Sciatti. And,
Yeah, he just passed away.
Yeah. And
He did a lot of the Fulci films, and he's probably more ripped off than anybody besides Basil Gogos when it comes to his
a
style.
lot of today's stuff has his look, that glow around everybody.
It's
and
gorgeous.
It's beautiful. But yeah, I see that a lot. And the what's the other guy? Renato. What's his name? The guy, he did a lot of this spaghetti western posters.
Oh yeah,
He did the Once Upon a Time in Hollywood fake Rick Dalton posters.
Yeah, that's great.
Beautiful.
Those are great. I just watched that this past weekend, and the way they do, like, he does like Nebraska Jim, which is supposed to be Navajo Joe, basically. And
And he did the original Navajo Joe poster where Burt Reynolds' head getting stepped on. Yeah,
Stepped on, yeah.
Renato's poster.
that's amazing.
Yeah, and that's what's crazy, because I remember the first time I got hired to do a movie poster was for a movie from Louisville, Dead Moon Rising.
yeah. I actually had that in my notes.
And I went to be an extra in it and met Mark. I wrote Mark because I know he was shooting the finale downtown and put it in the Louisville Courier Journal that he was looking for 200 extras, I think is what he wanted, and he got like 1,200.
Oh, wow.
It was insane. I didn't go because
crazy.
it was like 1,000 degrees that day.
Yeah,
and I knew
hot.
you all were going to be melting.
It was really hot, but everybody was laughing their ass off because it was just crazy. But I wrote him because he had his email in it, so I wrote him a message and told him that I was a comic book artist and that his movie sounded like a comic book to me. So I ended up doing it. They ended up getting they did a Photoshop thing with the distributor because that's what distributors do.
Yeah.
They got like John Wells to pose, and they put Jason Crow's head on it.
I never thought about that. You're fucking right.
Yeah, that's what they did. Two actresses who aren't in the movie one actress is not in the movie hanging on to his leg, and I think Tucky was behind them. But that was the first thing I did, or I was going to do. And I forget why I'm on this story now.
We're just talking about like movie posters and then this is how you got your start doing like covers besides like Horror Hound.
Yeah, the reason I got on that one was because when the distributor was ready to put it out, they said that we don't do illustrated covers because they're outdated. Like they need flesh on the cover or something. And I've done so many posters for directors, and as soon as they get distribution, the distributor's like, "Oh, we got our own people, we'll do it," and they put out some bullshit Photoshop image that has nothing to do with the movie, has none of the people in it, and so I usually try to tell directors if they hire me. They all want that Drew Struzan thing, or they want that Scream Factory thing, where it's the collage of the actors. And I said, you know what? I get it. But Scream Factory is a celebration of movies that we all know and love, with characters and actors we all know. But in 1981, no one knew who Bruce Campbell was, so they went with that because that sells. If it was just Bruce Campbell's face, we might have bought it, but that sells the fucking movie.
Yeah.
Chin enthusiast would have been
There's a market for that.
But those movies were sold on striking images that got us to rent it, not the actors, because we had no idea who they were. So I always try to steer indie filmmakers, like, let me come up with an image that when because I did my Girl Number 3 movie. People bought the poster and the T-shirt just because they liked the image. They didn't even know what the fucking movie was. They didn't really care. They just wanted the image. I said that's what they would do then. They would come up with a really striking image, a great title, and then they would make a shitty movie around it.
No, it's not. See, Girl Number 3 is actually based on your comic book too, and it was your first. Was that your directorial debut?
I didn't direct it. I wrote it.
Oh, okay.
But yeah, it was written.
I know we showed it like years ago.
Well, yeah, you did at the bar. Like we did. It
was our 5th anniversary party, and you were our guest of honor.
Yep,
that's right. Holy shit! I just forgot about that
a while back.
I totally forgot about that. I'm a piece of shit. Well, when I found out you were from Louisville, like my hometown, I was like, "What? This motherfucker's from here?" Because I had met you at a horror convention. Doesn't mean you're from Louisville. No.
Yeah, that was a fun night too. I remember hanging out with that. You let me pick the movies and everything. I think we showed Girl Number 3 at the end. But yeah, Girl Number 3 came from Dead Moon Rising because when Dead Moon Rising premiered, it wasn't the premiere. Mark had put together. Mark Poole, who was the writer-director, he had put a special. He hadn't finished the film yet, but it was the first Fright Night, and so he wanted to show something or do something. So he put like a little 40-minute behind the scenes talking about the movie or clips or whatever. And I went to see it, but I went there. I went into the room that they were showing it before, and there was a movie called The Silence of Isabella playing in there by a guy named, he's from Bardstown.
That's not good.
I can't remember his name. Forget his name right now, but it was really striking. The movie really, like, I came in like maybe 15 minutes late, and I wanted to see the beginning. So I went over. I didn't know anything about this stuff. Like, I was like, can I buy this? Like, I want to see this. I want to see the whole thing. So I talked to the promoters. I was like, hey, can I buy this movie? And they said, he doesn't sell it, and he didn't even want to put it out. He did it as an experiment. And so he gave me his information. I contacted him, and he sold me a copy so I could see it. But then I started asking him, like, how did, tell me about it. He said, well, I said, how much did it cost to make this? It's just one girl in the movie, and him and his wife play, like, supporting parts. And it's very experimental, it's very creepy. And he said the cost of the DVD, it cost to print it on. He said he went to Best Buy in E-Town, bought the camera. The girl that sold him the camera was the girl in the movie. Because
That's a movie.
she told him that that she had done Civil War reenactments her whole life with her family, so she always wanted to be an actress. So it's like, wow. He goes, so we just kind of experimented and made a movie over a weekend, and it's like, well, that's all it takes, So I went home and wrote Girl Number 3 that day to be a movie that I would show at a film festival, Fright Night, whatever it would be, and then. Jason Crow, becomes friends with him because we both come from Southwest Louisville, and we're about the same age. And he was trying to make movies. I think he made that movie Legacy, but this was right before he made it. And we talked about making movies together. And Girl Number 3 was something I pitched to him, and he, I don't know, I don't remember getting any response from him. But yeah, he ended up being in it, but because he's one of those great guys that's always like, if you need any help, let me know. And he just said, you need anything? And I was like, you want to be in it? He's like, yeah, sure. So what happened was it didn't happen. And then I said, well, I want to use this. I really liked Girl Number 3. I thought it was good, but I didn't know anything about filmmaking or how to get it going. So I was a comic book artist, so I'll just make it a comic book. And it really wasn't a comic book. It was more like, I kind of took a cue from like Bernie Wrightson did with Frankenstein. I was like, I'll just write it like that, and I'll do selected images that I want to draw.
That's brilliant.
So I did that instead because we were doing anthology comics, me and my buddies, Feral Comics. I was like, well, I can't do this whole thing as a comic. It would be 100 pages, or more. I'll do it this way, and I'll just need 20 pages. And so that's what I did. And the day that I went to put it, I'd send it out to the printers. And my wife had a cancer scare. And so I called the publisher up, the printer, and said, hey, I have a medical emergency. I'm going to conserve my money. I don't want to put our money into this comic book right now. Have you printed it yet? They said, no. I was like, don't print it. This was Comic Express. They've since gone out of business. But they were like a little mom and pop place. And they said, well, let me go ahead and print them for you, and then you just pay me when you get the money. I said, no, I don't want to owe anybody. I appreciate that.
Maybe not.
But I don't want to, I said, I just don't like, I don't like owing people stuff.
They
like
just
that.
repo your comics and sell them themselves.
Oh, man.
Well, he said, he goes, people have hard times. Let me gift you 20 issues for free. And he sent me 20 issues. And so I said, I can't turn it down. I appreciate it. And so I didn't want to sell them because they were a gift. So I went and gave them away to people who'd bought my other comics as a thank you for all those years of support. And I was out at UPS, which I worked at, and a guy named Herschel Zahn was a supervisor out there, and he was an actor. He was turning filmmaker, and the comic was set at Waverly Hills.
Yeah.
So you've already got your location.
The most haunted place in the world.
We got to talking, and he was running the haunt up there at that time. He'd done it last 2 years. He'd been the director of it, and he had directed a play up there with Jason Crow and Julie Strebel and a few other people. And I gave him a copy. Hey, you may like the comic, And so he took it home. He read it with his wife, and they called me up the next day and said, we want to make this our first film.
That's awesome.
They were already moving to make a feature already. They'd scrapped it. They said, we want this. This is the best horror story we've read. I want this to be our first movie. We want you to write the screenplay, and you can help produce it or whatever, and we'll make it. And so that's how my movie career kind of started. So we made it in 2009. We were supposed to shoot at Waverly. That fell through. But
that's probably a whole fucking
there's
podcast.
A big story there.
Yeah. That's probably a whole episode. Yeah.
But I was actually happy that we didn't get Waverly because Waverly kind of overshadows your film, really. If you play in a famous place
What's
like
that one? It's Death
Tunnel.
Tunnel. God.
I remember having a bunch of copies of that at the movie store, and everybody's like, oh, it was filmed in Louisville, blah, blah, blah. And then they bring it back and just fucking throw it down on the counter.
I don't mean to shit on that movie, but I'm going to shit on that movie.
It was awful.
It's so bad.
There's nothing good about it. Just two assholes came from out of the country. They were Australians, the guys that made it.
Yeah.
They came here, and they're like, it's Scary. I was gonna
the worst fucking
I was gonna
accent.
do one, but then it was like, I should stop. It's gonna
Hey,
sound awful.
mate, it's scary here.
Yeah, right, Mike?
Exactly. See, and anyway, fuck those people. Let's keep talking about you.
Luckily, you didn't get that location as your move.
We don't have any more
Yeah.
fans in Australia now.
Well, part of it was because of them, because they had stiffed the people. They didn't pay what they owed them, apparently. I shouldn't
Oh,
say that.
shit.
I don't know that. That's what I heard.
Oh,
That's
no.
a rumor. I don't know.
Shocking.
This is all satire.
All wrong.
Disclaimers.
But yeah, the place we got, to me, it was some of the locations that Dead Man Rising was playing.
Oh, okay.
Was shot at. So some old warehouses downtown Louisville, OK Storage, and there's a place on 11th Street. So visually, it looked better than I think Waverly, because Waverly's cool, but it's kind of dull looking inside.
Yeah. Once you get in there, like, wow, this is a cool hallway. Again.
Yeah.
Another hallway.
Yeah.
Oh, look. I mean, and if
it
you're
would
shooting
take
off the terrace or whatever, it's like, cool. There's
Yeah.
woods.
It looks good. It's a good exterior shot.
It really is. Or if you're like you're in a hallway on the outside looking in, and it's like, I mean, that's about it. There's some cool shit. It's
It's like so much concrete in here.
God damn it. And at the time when I used to go, there was just massive holes in the floor.
Right. There's not enough shit on the walls to be
No.
a real insane asylum.
So I looked up your IMDb. I'm the worst at
IMDb.
that. Yeah, and motherfucker, it's awful. That needs to be up. There's like, you are known for The Confession of Fred Krueger, Star Wars: Hand of the Empire, Volumes of Blood, and that's it. I was like, this isn't right.
That's all it says.
That's all. I mean, that's what. That's your like your little bio in there. So I don't know who controls that, but you need to get hold of your
I
agent.
mean, there's something on there about Kill Granny Kill.
Oh yeah, look, Dave's looking it up right now.
I don't know what you're looking at, Steve. You're looking at IMBD or something like that.
IMBD.
It's a DB.
I know. Fuck off and die. Oh shit.
No, there's about, I think I've made 8 films. at this
Yes.
point. Yeah.
Yeah.
Is it just my bio says that?
Yeah.
Oh,
Okay.
that's just the bio, yeah.
I'm lazy.
Oh, so you're in control of
I'm
that.
probably in control.
Oh man. Let's see. You Rebel Rousers, the studio. That was your original comic?
That was a comic company I started in 2010. Some guys that I made Girl Number 3 with were also big comic nerds, and they wanted to make comics. And it was one of those things like, I always wanted to make comics, and I'm like, well, guys, I know how to do it. Like, so I basically started the company to give them their first comic book
That's
experience. So I made an anthology called Rebel Rouser Comics, and I got them. They never got around to doing it, but I met some other people. Brian Rodman, I don't know if you know him. He's a local artist he was a little kid basically at the time, 17, 18 years old, but now it's 10 years ago, I guess. And he's still going. He's putting books out constantly. But I just basically met with him at a comic book shop and said, here's what you need to do. Here's how we do it. This is all I need from you, and we'll put it out. And I put out about 3 comics. And at the beginning, it was just kind of give guys their first taste of it. Because, and I had because there's nothing like pulling that first comic book out of the box when you get it. Because you've dreamed about your whole life. Like, I just stared at the first one. They're like, are you all right, Nate? I'm like, because you just, as a kid, you're like reading comics. You're like, I did this. This is a comic that I did.
And there weren't as many independently owned distributors and places like publishers that would do that now. Like now, I can literally go on Google and be like, hey, how do I get my comic book published? And it's going to happen. Redbubble. I mean, there's some places that do T-shirts made.
Well, there's no excuse now to not do it.
Right.
Because, when I did it, there were no printers. That Comic Express didn't exist. We had to go through regular printers, and they're looking at it going, well, you got to order, 5,000 copies, and it's going to come. I'm like, we're not going to sell 5,000 copies,
Yeah.
and we don't have that kind of money. So it was scary, and it was expensive, and but once those things popped up, it was like, if you want to order one copy, you can order one copy. And so,
Yes, you can do that at books. But
Test pressing.
Yeah. But beware.
But that worked out to where, that's why I told the guys, like, if you just want to order 50 copies for your friends, it's going to cost you, $100 or something, $150. And, you do whatever you want with them. But, that wasn't there back, I think it was 2002 is when we were starting.
Yeah, I made a note that says that the Malevolent comic series was created in '96, and then you released it in 2006 to 2008 for the first 10 chapters, and then you released the next 10 in 2010. Did you ever finish this?
I never did.
I know you didn't. That's why I just thought I'd ask.
I did 250 pages. Well, like I said, Horror Hound happened. I guess we segue to that because that was yeah, I was doing, and I enjoyed it, but it's hard to sell independent comics. I mean, it's just almost impossible, and it's a whole lot of work. You spend 6 months back then. Again, the turnover, you'd send the files off to your printer and you get it in 3 months. So you'd work 6 months on the art or the comic, send it off, and then so it's about a 9-month process, and you go to a convention and no one gives a shit. You got to learn that lesson of we did like a comic book signing at a comic book shop. I don't know if it was Great Escape or not, but we sold one book. Like we're there for hours and no one gave a fuck. And so you take that as a lesson, like, because when you first start, everyone thinks, oh, I've got the next thing. How many writers have written me saying, I've got the next Walking Dead? I'm like, how many Walking Deads come along? I got the next big indie. How many indie comics have really been successful? Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, the biggest probably. Other than that, Walking Dead maybe, but he'd already been in the industry. He already had a name for himself. He wasn't like a nobody coming out of nowhere. And even Eric Powell will talk about how even the Goon doesn't sell that well.
Yeah,
it's not that successful. Even James O'Barr is not rolling in the dough. That like he's not pumping out comic books constantly.
No, if it wasn't for that movie, people it'd go into obscurity.
Yeah,
I mean, there'd be like a goth kid now and then, or somebody who's like,
the
"Oh, you're a
film.
vampire for Halloween." He's like, "I want to kill you."
Yeah.
No, if they would have never made it, goth kids all around the world would be totally different.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah.
It's true.
Where's that one guy who made the student film of The Crow?
Oh, that was pretty.
Called James O'Barr's The Crow, which I have on VHS.
I had that same VHS.
Yeah, it's not bad.
He did a pretty good job.
Yeah, it's pretty good.
You can tell he loved it.
Yeah.
And he starred in it, right? It was him starring in it.
Yeah, he was the star of it.
Eric.
I guess when he bought the camera, the girl didn't want to be in his movie.
Well,
Get away from me.
We're talking about your career in horror, and when it comes to doing covers, who was one of the first comics that you ever picked up? Like you picked it off. Was it like a Wrightson, or was it like an old? I've got like Warren comics on there. Was it a Tales from the Crypt? Or was it what was it?
Again, I was kind of late to because I remember I never bought them, but I remember being drawn to the Conan the Barbarian comics, but I never really bought them as a kid. But I think the first ones I bought were when I saw Batman. I went out, Norm Brayfogle was drawing them then in the Detective Comics, and I think that was my first initial like, holy shit, like I want to do this. I want to draw like this guy. And then all of a sudden, I pick up X-Men and Mark Silvestri and Jim Lee, and those guys just blew me away. And then you start going backwards. You start seeing John Byrne and Neil Adams and Art Adams and things like that, Cam Kennedy, Sam Keith. So I got in it when artists were kind of exploding with like the whole, what would become Image, Todd McFarlane, all those guys.
Oh, yeah. Lee and Rob Liefeld. We can make fun of him all we want. He's laughing. He just rolls around in money every day.
He just rolls around in pictures of people that just aren't bad perspectives. I just don't understand. I don't get it. How does this man had a job?
It doesn't make much sense.
Well, because at that time I loved X-Force. I just ate it up, man. I didn't care because at that time I think I was the perfect age for that.
Yeah, the kind of
just
age where
fucking
you
bullshit,
also have
testosterone, big boob, no feet, motherfucker, and I love this fucking shit. I don't care.
If you don't understand, people in that universe have large chests.
Large
Just
men,
in no
women,
ways.
whatever.
Men, women, everybody.
The arms
just
don't
the
make
biggest
sense.
chest.
It's ridiculous. Just more fucking striations and fucking whatever you want to call it. More lines. It's great.
Yeah.
It's like there's a shadow.
Yeah,
It's fucking great.
Todd McFarlane draws things so skinny and like sinewy, and like when he did Spider-Man, he has like no waist, and he's like,
Can we just put them together and have a normal person?
yeah, you can have like a normal person there.
Yeah, if you've taken Todd McFarlane and Jim Lee and like put them back 10 years where they're learning, then you get Eric
You have like a
Liefeld.
dad bod.
Yeah, Eric Larson was another one of mine. He picked up the Amazing Spider-Man after McFarlane left and became Spider-Man comic. That's the shit's amazing. But the villains in those comic books are what is more memorable than anything else. I mean, it's great. Ooh, Batman's awesome. Spider-Man's great. But fucking Venom, Carnage, those kind of things.
Yeah.
Like Spawn. Like Spawn was the first comic book that I picked up. Was like, I like everything about this. Because he is kind of a villain. He's a bastard.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And he's rotting, and I love that shit.
That and probably Max were probably the best of the
Max
Image stuff.
God, who did that? Was that
Sam Keith.
Yeah, Sam Keith.
Yeah.
That cartoon was great.
Oh yeah,
That was
I remember
MTV
watching
cartoon.
That came on MTV like at late at night.
That liquid television.
Yeah,
Yeah.
liquid with
Yeah.
Aeon Flux or however you say
Yeah,
that.
the head.
The head. That shit always freaked me out. Yeah, I was like, what's wrong with that guy's teeth? They're so big. on
It's
the
so good,
Max.
though. And
couldn't tell.
the great thing about that cartoon is it looked just like the comic book. They didn't try to make it their own. Like,
Yeah.
no,
Yeah,
let's,
it's like they just animated the panels. It
it's
was really cool.
fucking amazing.
Yeah.
And dark as hell. The good thing it came in like at nighttime. And that wasn't Eon Flux, was just all silent.
Yeah.
Those are my favorites, like little bitty vignettes of it.
Yeah, and
great.
like the little fly would get caught in the eyelash.
Oh, yeah.
Oh no.
That was always like,
I just kept watching. One of these days, she's gonna live, man. One of these days.
But I made a bunch of notes for like horror artists, cover artists. I've got Sidney Reisenberg who did like the old Thrill books and ghost story covers. Like I should have made a note of that. But Gene Oldman did the ghost stories cover for the Headless Chinaman. You can tell that's in the 40s. Monroe Eisenberg did horror stories, dime store books, and shutter pulps. Then you actually have female artists that a lot of people don't talk about because we're all dudes talking about dude art. So you got Margaret Brunge, who did like the Weird Tales in this. She did like 60 covers from the 30s to the 40s. And of course, Lovecraft hated her work because she used to illustrate a lot of his artwork, his stories for some of those covers. It's like, oh, of course he didn't. He's a piece of shit.
yeah,
Let's see. Lily Renee did Tales from the Crypt and The Vault of Horror. And you got to jump like 40 years and you got fucking H.R. Giger. Like people like that. They've just changed what perception of what art was. I mean, you had Basil Gogos. There's so many. I mean, you just named like 30 of them.
Yeah, and like, and what sucks about like a lot of people you're talking about is, you know, they used to not let artists sign their stuff. And
They didn't own
like
it.
no one knew who it was, and they would just end up in a dumpster. You know, when they were like doing their spring cleaning, like great paintings just thrown out from these magazines, and you're like. And you know, you still every once in a while run it. Like, can you hide your signature? And I remember writing some of the people I ended up working with. Like, hey, you think you could like talk about who the artist was? Because I wanted to know who they were. Like Jason Edmondson, and I'm like, I didn't know. I saw his artwork, and it was for something. And I went, who is this guy? Because they didn't have his name anywhere.
He's a Canadian treasure.
Yeah, he is. and just all these different artists. I'm like, I want to know who these guys are because they're fantastic. You know, and I want to. They should have their name out there, you know, and because I'm a big thing on that, especially.
Well, you're part of that new wave of horror art, cover art. Well, I know you're a nice guy and you're really like soft spoken, but you're a fucking badass that people don't even realize. Like when you pick up the Halloween DVDs that came out, and the Nightmare, the Night of the Demons one, where it was like a big problem putting Linnea in front of Angela. I remember that whole story. We talked about that one time.
Yeah.
Well, for me, I mean, honestly, like I think it's like a boom, but there's kind of like a resurgence in horror Blu-ray. Everybody has these boutique Blu-ray things now, and like, but all that for me started with like Scream Factory in like around 2012, because I was like, oh man, people are putting out like nice versions of these movies that I love instead of finding like a shitty DVD with no features on it, and like they were putting out like really good stuff, and I was like, and this artwork is fucking amazing. So I bought Sleepaway Camp 2 and 3, and it came with a giant poster on it. And which I gifted to Steve at Gore Club one night. And he was like, I know the guy who drew this. And I was like, are you serious?
Yeah.
And then here we are.
And you have a story about that, don't you?
Of the Sleepaway.
Of them wanting the art different from how you saw it. That's a good story.
Oh, I can get into Scream Factory because it is a cool
Well, especially that cover itself, the Sleepaway Camp, where
Sleepaway
you
Camp.
had
Oh yeah, that was an interesting.
the original cover, and then you had to change it for them.
Yeah, because again, going back to Images, like they wanted the collage. I knew they were going to want the collage.
What'd you call it? The kitchen sink? For,
The
for
kitchen sink
syndrome or whatever.
People started accusing me of being the kitchen sink. I'm like, dude, that's what they want. Like,
That's when the art has like a million things on there.
Oh,
because
yeah.
they would send me a list like, we want this and this and this and this and this, and I'm like, now I got to figure out how to put that on a square, basically, because that's what a Blu-ray image is. And people are like, these same compositions, and I was like, there's not a lot to do with that space when they're telling you put this amount of stuff on it. So yeah, with the Sleepaway, they didn't tell me what they wanted right away, but I thought, I just went to my design thing. I was like, well, if I just draw the cast, it's going to look like the cover of Poison Ivy or fucking, Little Darlings or something. Yeah, it's not going to look like a horror film. Like, are we going to sell the horror? Or are we going to sell the cast? And I thought, because if you just sell the cast, it just looks like an '80s camp comedy movie.
The original doesn't even have somebody from the movie on the poster of it.
Exactly,
So.
yeah.
Like you said, you didn't know who you're selling it to.
Yeah, so I
Because
thought,
Judy's a whore.
what can we do that's going to be kind of striking? And they wanted the cabins, they wanted the trees, and
Some water.
I think that's what they wanted. I think they wanted the lake and all that. So I was like, all right, I'll draw that. Then I'll draw the killer above the tree line, but a teenager body, because that's what it is. But I don't want to ruin it, so put the camp T-shirt on, have him holding a bow, and have him holding have a machete or whatever I had in the other hand, a knife, I think.
Knife, yeah.
And then I had the campfire burning. And so I turned that in, and they go, oh, we were really hoping it would be something like Night of the Demons, like you did with the collage of characters and kind of whimsical. And I told them, I was like, well, I didn't do that because it's going to look like this, what I just said, the comedy. And they go, well, can we see it? So I drew it, and they go, you're right. So it looks like, it doesn't look like a horror movie. And so we went back and forth and back and forth. Finally, they consulted the director. What do you think? He said, well, I think he's right with that, but I want to see Angela on there. I want to see her head floating.
Yeah, her head floating.
Which I don't have a problem with the floating head. People talk about the floating head. Scream Factory certainly heard that shit a lot. But like, you go back to the 30s and they had floating heads on the posters. That's not new.
Yeah.
Like
Should have just said it's a metaphor because she has a dick.
Well, that's well, I had people
Put her dick in the water.
Well, like trying to fit it in there. That was the only place that was center of the image, and like where the crotch was. And people were like, he's subliminally saying, what he's blood. People accused me of like ruining the twist because I put her head there. And it's like, I don't know.
If somebody saw that and they were like, oh, I can't watch this now. The killer is her, and she obviously has a penis.
Yeah.
But it is spoiling who the killer is.
Well, yeah. Originally, I had her smiling, like looking innocent, or I didn't have her smiling, but I had her looking like scared, innocent, final girl, kind of to send that message.
Yeah.
And the director said, I want her looking menacing. I'm like,
You just ruined the movie.
okay. So no, they're not going to know that she's the final girl now. They're going to know that she's menacing. So
How about I just move everything down and put her head up top?
and of course, it comes out and everyone's like, well, this fucking artist, he's putting a head on there. And I was like, that's not what I designed. But you do what you got to do.
You get the brunt of it.
Well, for the sequel, you could have just put like Bruce Springsteen on there. He could be like, "This is my sister." There's your famous face right there.
One of my favorites that you did was the Terror Train one and the Night of the Demons one, and we had a conversation about that. The Night of the Demons one is fucking fantastic, and Linnea is the reason that you go to see that movie as a kid and as an adult. I mean, I love the Angela character. Mimi Kincaid is fucking badass, but nobody cares about that character. You follow Linnea, even though she dies and turns into a demon, and you put her forefront. And I was like, that was the selling point. She had just done Return of the Living Dead.
Yeah, like the only note they gave me on that was we want Linnea with the lipstick. Yeah, that was the only note I got from that cover, and I said, well, okay, I can't put the lipstick scene on there. So I watched. Basically, when I do these covers, I'll watch the film, even if I've seen it 1,000 times. I'll watch it and I'll try to find striking images, stuff that just jumps out. And when I watched it, Linnea with that heart drawn on her face, I said, that's an iconic image.
Yeah.
And so, and again, like you said, she was the star. She was what got the movie made in some ways. She was the draw. She was the name. Even the director said, we were so lucky to have Linnea because of Return. Because it was right after Return, right? So she was, the icon. And I know that they used Angela as the selling point, and she was great, but I'm like, every art has had her on the cover, and that's why people look at it that way. And it is her party, but Linnea is the first to become a demon, right?
Absolutely.
So I went with it, and people were like, why is she center? It's not her movie, and blah, blah, blah. It was just, it was a choice.
Horror fans are the worst.
Yeah.
We suck.
I mean, she's the most recognizable person from that movie when it came out.
Yeah.
And she still is.
It still is, yeah.
I had the movie poster upstairs. It's the image of Angela on there is not, you're not selling Amelia Kincaid.
Yeah.
You're selling the movie as a demon. It's a monster. It doesn't really matter what demon it is because you don't know what the hell this even means.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's a great looking poster.
Right. I mean, there's a Creepshow poster behind Ace. I'm not going to put Tom Atkins' face on there because half the fucking world doesn't know who Tom Atkins is, but you did for Halloween 3.
Yeah.
Subway.
Yeah.
Halloween 3. Yeah. That was I mean, it goes back. You mentioned Terror Train, didn't you?
Oh yeah. That's one of my favorite movie posters. And then you did the Blu-ray of it, and I love that just as much.
Yeah,
The train tracks. And
got that. I think I got that job because of Horror Hound. I was working for Horror Hound, and Horror Hound did a show in 2011. Because I knew I was kind of semi-connected to Scream Factory about 2 years before it dropped. Because I had done a poster for Horror Hound that had like a slasher theme, 80s slasher. So they had Dick Warlock and Bob Elmore and Ted White and the killer from Prowler and Funhouse and Terror Train and all these, maybe even Bloody Valentine, maybe. And so I had drawn that character on the poster, the
he's
conductor guy, for Horror Hound.
Joe.
And Horror Hound put that everywhere. They were using it to advertise the show and advertise the magazine. It was in the magazine. And I think Cliff saw that. Cliff McMillan, who started Scream Factory, him and Jeff Nelson. Cliff had been a friend of mine on Facebook. I didn't know who he was. He had friended me. And, as an artist, you get people writing you out of the blue. Hey, I'm working on this. I'm doing that. Are you interested? Blah, blah. And he'd written me just saying, hey, he didn't say Shout Factory. He just said, we're thinking about doing a Blu-ray of Terror Train. Would you be interested in doing the cover? Again, no one was doing that other than Arrow, I think, at that time. And I never thought that was ever going to come my way or anyone's way at that point, any artist, because everything was, again, photographs. And so I was like, yeah. But I don't get excited about anything until it's done. It's happening. And of course, it went. He didn't tell me who, what he was representing, who is putting it out. And then a year goes by. So it's like early 2012, and the art director for Shout Factory, her name was Carrie, wrote me, said, "Hey, this is Carrie. Carrie from Shout Factory, and we talked to you about a Terror Train Blues." Oh, Shout Factory! I know who you guys are. Okay. So, but they said that they had done the Roger Corman series, and they had sold really well. Jeff and Cliff had done that, and they were big horror fans, big 80s horror fans, and they wanted to do it properly because they said these movies get thrown out on DVD, shitty. They got a trailer on it, cast credits or whatever.
Yeah.
Like, oh, Tom Atkins was in this movie and that movie, and it's like a shitty version, and there's nothing. Because we want to do all these new commentaries, and Red Shirt would do all these new things, and Sean Clark was doing his Hollow Ground show because that I think he was just doing that on his own, and I think he was doing it in Horror Hound magazine as well.
Yeah,
and so they were getting him, and they wanted to know if I would still be interested in doing art. I said, yeah, absolutely. So we worked out a deal, and they said, would you like to do the Funhouse? And I was like, well, sure, yeah, whatever. I just want to do anything. I don't give a shit what it is. You could say, do you want to do Birdemic? I'll fucking do Birdemic.
Do part 2.
We're gonna need a shot. We're gonna need a drawing of all the birds together standing.
Just doing this. They'll be like the sliding, like the fucking pop-up books. The bird just going like that.
And yeah, so we made that deal. Then like the day or two later, they said, "You want to do Halloween 2 and 3?" I'm like, "Are you fucking kidding me?" Like I'm doing cartwheels off the. I get to draw Michael Myers and Dr. Loomis, and and
you did all like the overseas alternate covers, right? For like 4 and 5.
I've done almost all of the Halloween movies
at
this point. I did a lot of stuff in Austria, Germany, and France. But yeah, Halloween 2 and 3 were my first ones, and the cover for Halloween 3. I don't remember if they gave me everything they wanted on there, but again, I just go through the movie and try to find striking images. And I thought Cochran's kind of a puppet master kind of thing, so I kind of did that idea where he's hovering over things, and just the images that were so iconic, like the kids trick-or-treating, the silhouette, and It's cluttered as fuck. I mean, it really is one of my most cluttered covers, and I think that became the style to the point where that's what Scream Factory became, to the point that when Gary Pullen was hired, they made him do me. Like,
oh my God, that's a
Darkman
compliment from hell. He's a
he's a fucking legend, and I'm like, and he was bummed because he was getting shit for it. Like, people didn't like it, and I'm like, because you made him do not Gary Pullen. Like, Gary Pullen's brilliant. Like, let him be Gary Pullen, and they made him do the collage thing like me and everybody else. One of my favorite artists, and like, you made Gary not be Gary, you know, and so he was bummed about it. But that they said, well, that's the look of Scream Factory. All the covers were starting to look like that, to the point where they started mixing this up, and I got tired of it. And like, I would start to try to do things different. So like when I did the Sleepaway Camp cover, or when I did Shocker.
The Shocker one? You know I fucking love that motherfucker.
Oh, yeah, that's great.
I had to fight
You're
for
actually
that.
sitting in front of a fucking Horace Pinker costume on the wall.
Well, they wanted the collage thing. I was like, I just want Horace coming out of the TV.
Yeah.
Like, just, you know, and then the Dolls cover, you know, I fought for that because I just want to do a scene. I don't want to do a collage, you know, and that one, you know, Stuart Gordon actually came up to me at Horror Hound. Like, I was standing in line with my daughter buying a copy of Harvest Lake from Scott.
With Jason Crow.
Yeah, with Jason Crow. And I'm standing in line, and all of a sudden I get a tap, and it's Stuart fucking Gordon. And he's like, "Are you Nathan?" You know, it's real soft spoken.
Shut the fuck up.
Wow.
He goes, "Are you Nathan?" I'm like, "Yeah." He goes, "I just wanted to tell you your Dolls cover was beautiful."
It is.
And I was like, "Wow." I was like, "Well, your film's beautiful." Like, what do you say, you know?
Like, you're beautiful.
You're beautiful, Stuart. But yeah, I started to try to. So if you look at my later ones, I was trying, like the Village of the Damned, and
The Day of the Dead one is one of my favorites.
the Day of the Dead one.
It
was,
looks like it swoops down. Like, it's just, you know, it's got Bub with the
it's
gun.
really cluttered, but it works.
It
Somehow.
is, but that's the one that it's like mashed potatoes. It's just in a good way. God, I love mashed potatoes, motherfuckers.
That one-
I'm just saying, it's beautiful. It's like a swirl.
That one was has a funny story with that one too, because when they had the Jamie Lee Curtis show at Horror Hound, they were there and they were announcing their next 6. I had done 5 covers by then. I'd done those 4, and then I did Deadly Blessing, and I think the only other one was Dude Designs had done the They Live. I think that was their 5th, and so they were announcing their next 6 titles. It's so funny because they've gotten so many now. It's like they've done so much, but like back then it was like they had 5 titles, so they're announcing their next 6, and they had a, you know, Michael Felcher, I think, or Sean, probably Sean Clark was doing it, but I think Michael was up there because he was doing all the extra features, and they told me before they went up that they were giving me the Burning.
It's a good one.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
they said, well, and it was funny because I had done, I can't remember the damn company that hired me, but they had me do movies that never had sequels, but they wanted to do faux posters, so I did a Burning 2 poster.
I don't think I've ever seen that.
Oh, it's got to be somewhere out there. Like, and you know, and I tried to
Pull it
like
up,
think
Dave.
about what it would be, and then like I was like, well, you know, all those movies had like a character actor, so I put starring Ernest Borgnine, and all this stuff. And so they saw that and goes, "What is Nate like auditioning for this?" Because I had no idea they were doing Burning, but they said, "We saw that. We love how you did Cropsy, so we want you to do the Burning." So I knew that going in, and then they announced, I think it was Life Force, The Fog, Day of the Dead, The Howling, and Night of the Comet. And I said, I want Night of the Comet.
Yeah.
I said, I love that movie. I watched it so much. And they said, oh, that's a weird one. We're going to give that to you then, because that's going to need a fan.
Well, it's hard to capture what that movie's about
Yeah.
without being like the same old cop zombie.
I kind of just went with a Attack of the 50-Foot Woman kind of style, where they're standing over the city, and because I thought the city in the sky is such an important part of that movie. And then my favorite thing about that cover is I put the video game scores, the Reg and the in the background. But I was like, I didn't expect to get many of them. I think that's when Justin Osborne did his first one. He did Life Force, and he did The Fog. And I said, well, I'll probably maybe get one more, maybe. And then they said, do you want to do The Howling? I said, absolutely, I want to do The Howling. So I did that. But I was at Horror Hound Weekend, and Michael came up to my booth and said, "So I hear you're doing Day of the Dead." Now he's like, that's his movie, like it's his favorite movie. So he was wanting to be like, he wanted to go full 9 on that one. And I said, "I am." And he said, "Oh shit!" So I didn't know. He knew that I was getting Day of the Dead, and I was like, well. So now I'm at the show, like starting to, what will I do? What will I do? And I thought, I want
Mashed potatoes.
that movie. Mashed potatoes. Like, well, that movie has so many iconic zombies in it. It's just amazing. Like, of course, Bub, but Dr. Tongue and all those other ones. The guy on the gurney with the guts falling out and roads getting tore apart. There's so many great things in that. And Dr. Frankenstein.
Is there food? You should have put that in the background when you're hiding your signature.
So I did the I kind of mocked it up already of what I would do, and then when they wrote me and told me I got the job, they gave me the list of the cast. They wanted all the cast members on there, and I said, "What about this? I think the fans will want to see the zombies." And they're like, "Yeah, we love this. Go with that." Oh, that's how that one happened.
Nice. I like the matinee. That's another.
I love that
Matinee,
Yeah,
dude.
matinee's great.
one. That was the last one I did, I think,
Like ever?
for Scream Factory.
Okay, I was like, what?
Yeah.
You don't remember?
They got a new art director, and I don't know. I think they were just, once they blew up, because people kept saying, why aren't you hiring Nathan anymore? Why aren't you doing any? I get that question still, like, what are you doing for Scream Factory next? I'm like, dude, it's been like 6 years. I haven't done any.
Yeah, Osborne does a lot.
He doesn't do any more now. It's mostly Joe and
Was it Devin?
I think Devin's been doing a lot
Devin,
lately.
yeah.
And I don't. There's a few other artists that do it. I don't really see them anymore, but because I stopped follow that page like 2 years into it because it just became a list shit on the artist fest.
That's what I was meant to say. Is like
Yeah.
I've seen you get the brunt of not just you, but a lot of artists. I mean, it's
Every
just what it
artist.
is.
I mean, Gary got it. I mean, it doesn't matter how great you are. Like Paul Shipper, one of the best artists around now. I mean, basically Drew Struzan number 2. And his covers would get shit on. So you're like, fuck these guys. I ain't even gonna pay attention to it. After a while, you just like, I don't want to hear praise. I don't want to hear criticism. It doesn't matter. I got paid, whatever. It's like the NWA. Like, they bought the motherfuckers. I don't care what they do. I got a check.
Yeah.
So I don't really know. I don't, unless someone shares it, like a cover. I don't even know what they're putting out now. But, yeah, it was a great job though. But the matinee one was the last one. They did hire me for another one. I won't say because it got the distributor. Fuck it, I'll say it was trick or treat.
What the fuck?
Are you fucking serious?
Yeah, I did.
This is we talk about this movie so much, so one of our co-hosts quit because of it. He's like, if you talk about this movie one more fucking time. No, I'm just kidding,
Yeah,
but not really.
Yeah, I was excited about it, and they said they didn't want it to look like the original DVD Blu-ray cover, which was a collage. It was Sam and all the other shit around it, and the orange and all that. I said, okay.
Oh, that trick or treat.
Yeah, not.
Don't
yeah,
look at me.
Yeah,
Oh,
not.
trick or
Yeah,
treat.
not the.
Trick or treat.
Oh,
Yeah, not the Skippy movie.
All of our dicks just went down, but back up a little bit.
that
It's
was
fine.
good. That's a good movie too. Isn't it?
Yeah.
It's a fantastic movie.
So they said, well, let's do something else. What do you have? And I said, well, that movie's kind of whimsical. Why don't we do something fun and whimsical about it? So I did this image of like Sam without the mask, very big, almost like a moon, and then Sam's trick-or-treating, and I think I had the little witch girl, and I hid the masks on the ground. I had the werewolf hand was coming up. I think it was grabbing the top of Sam's head or something. And so they loved it. It was exactly what they were looking for. So I'm halfway through drawing it, and they said, this distributor or the rights people wanted so many changes that we're just going to kill it.
Wow.
So they, I got paid or whatever, but they killed it. And they hired Devin, and they got their collage, what they didn't want to do.
It's still gorgeous, but
It's
yeah,
still nice,
I would have
but-
liked to have seen that.
Yeah. So I had a few that didn't get through. Like I did Cycle 2 and Cycle 3, and they got killed because I think
We need more Norman Bates. Just Norman Bates.
They went with the movie posters.
Oh, bummer.
I think
Go back to
the
that.
people who had to make the decision were like, no, we don't want new art. We want this. And
Anthony Perkins with
And then-
his keys.
I got to show. I did get to show Tom Holland the Cycle 2 cover, and he
No
loved
shit.
it. And he's like, "Fuck, why didn't he do this?" You know, like, I had those stories. Like the guy that did, I did a cover. The guy that did scary stories to tell in the dark. You know, I friends with him on Facebook, and I shared a piece I did of that movie that didn't get approved, and he's like, "This is fucking beautiful. Like, why would they not do it?"
God damn.
So yeah, you get those stories, but sometimes licenses are odd, and they or sometimes you just don't get it. Like you're trying to do something that the fans will get, but they don't understand. Like,
Yeah.
oh, the fans are gonna eat this up.
From a marketing standpoint, they don't understand. Like, that's stupid. Nobody will ever buy that.
Yeah.
Obviously, that.
But yeah, it was a great job. I would love to do it again. I did a lot. I did Synapse. I did Code Red a lot. I did like the stuff overseas. I got to do things that maybe I wouldn't have gotten to do here. Like I did Martyrs. I did The Crow. Over there.
Oh, I haven't seen that one.
I did Love in a 45. And the Exterminator.
That's a great one.
Yeah, so I got to do that's what I liked about, especially over there, because they love those Italian movies and exploitation movies. So, like, because I love film, I'm not just a horror guy. So, like, I would jump at the opportunity, even doing something like Garbage Pail Kids for Scream Factory.
You did that?
Yeah, I did that one. Like, I was like, that's kind of where I cut my teeth, was drawing Garbage Pail Kids in like 4th grade when they came out. Like, my teacher gave them to us as rewards. And my grandma would buy me packets of them, and I would just sit there drawing Garbage Pail Kids. So it's kind of a full circle thing to do the Blu-ray cover for that movie, even though it's not really like a movie I loved or anything. But,
Yeah, that movie's weird.
Yeah.
God, it's fucking weird.
but I got to do, Garbage Pail Kids at least. And, so, I mean, I don't even need to love the movie. It's so funny because I treat everything with respect. I always, it doesn't matter if I'm a fan. I want to know why the fans love that movie, and I want them to be happy with it and excited. And I learned early on. I think the first thing I did for the Horror Hound that caught eyes was the Phantasm cover I did, and I hid all those little things in there like Morningside Drive-In, showing Kenny and Company, and
That's the Horror
Phantasm.
Hound magazine one.
Yeah.
Okay, I remember that, yeah.
And so people started to respond to all the little details, and because I was a comic book artist, I was very detail-oriented or story-oriented. So I liked throwing things into the movies or my covers that I knew the fans would know.
Yeah.
And see and go, oh, fuck, you put that in there, or you put this in there. Like, that's what I want the fans to see when they see it. Like, because it drives me nuts. Because I know that's how horror fans are. We know these movies left and right.
Hell yeah.
And when you see, like...
We freeze frame to jerk off, and we freeze frame to keep watching the movie. And then we freeze frame like, did you see that one movie poster in the background? There's a Freddy Krueger glove and Evil Dead. We do that shit.
We do.
Yeah.
We know the extras' names. We know like we know who was in Dawn of the Dead, and that's, I know that about horror fans, and that's the cool thing about them. And I know how it is when we see like bullshit art where it's like, well, that's the part 4 costume instead of the part 1.
We've all done that.
Yeah, and you're like, didn't this artist do any homework?
The only way you can get away with that if it's fucking Ghostface. Otherwise, it's part 1 too, unless you can see like the fucking zip or the snaps or something. Like, yeah, I saw a shirt not too long ago. It was like a Friday the 13th Part 5, but it wasn't Roy's mask. I'm like,
Yeah.
fuck you.
That's the most obvious one that you would know.
How do you fuck that up?
Completely different mask.
Didn't they put out a whole series with all part 5 masks?
No shit, man. It's awful. I hate this world.
You burned down that Walmart.
God damn it. I don't go to Walmart no more. I made a list of some of my favorite newer people and some of my old Rick Melton. He's a big fan of mine. I'm a big fan of his. He's a big fan of mine. Fuck me. Rick Melton he does all the Dark Side magazine covers. And stunningly savage books. He's fucking sick. He's so great. Of course, I'm going to go back and talk about Ed Ripka.
Ed, yeah.
Slayer.
Amazing. Oh yeah, and those guys like
Slayer,
Derek,
fucking Megadeth. I mean, come on.
Derek Riggs.
Derek Riggs.
Like I got to meet both those guys at Horror Hound, and
God, I wanted to see. I wanted to get something from Iron Maiden. Just please sign.
Oh man,
this.
I got his Stranger in a Strange Land LP signed by him.
Talking about things that have a million fucking things in the background.
Exactly.
You open that album up, and it's like, holy shit.
It's like Somewhere in Time. Like there's so many. There's
Yes,
so
it's
much
a
shit on
cityscape.
the cover of Somewhere in
I
Time.
love that cover. That's my favorite album cover. And like, it was Horror Hound. It was before the show opened. It was Friday. And this is when I was doing live drawings at the shows.
I remember that.
Because everyone was being accused of being just copy and paste, throwing filters on things. Like, fuck you, I'm going to draw the show.
I'll say it. There's a couple of artists who were actually stealing other pieces of art and putting it in their art and trying to pass it off, and they got caught. Next case. Okay,
Yeah.
let's carry on.
But because of that, a lot of us started to come under fire. I mean, dude designers is writing me like, "Oh fuck, man, they're coming for us," and all this. And I'm like, oh, well, we just got to start showing our fucking process, So we started seeing Edmondson and me and a few other people like doing live drawings on Facebook and going to shows. And I had an easel and I was drawing. I think I was drawing the Crypt Keeper because John was there. And I'm drawing it, and all of a sudden I feel someone behind me. And there's nobody there. It's before the show opens, and I feel somebody watching, and I'm drawing, and he like taps me on the shoulder and goes, "Looking great, mate." And it was fucking Derek Riggs.
Oh my god.
And I'm like, oh shit.
Oh my gosh. Can you just sign my scalp? That's fucking. I love that shit, man. Vincent Locke, I brought him up earlier. Cannibal Corpse. He did Entomb covers. I mean, album covers is another thing because I mean we're metalheads as well, and that's the thing. Is like you're talking about earlier. It's like the cover, you see it.
Yeah.
I want that. It probably sucks, but I don't care. And it's a 50-50 chance it might suck. It's
like every Death album cover. Like as soon as I saw like that Death album cover, I'd be like, "This is probably going to be really good."
Yeah, I said that about Molly Hatchet, and then
it
didn't work out.
Yeah.
It's like fucking what's the Pied Piper of rock? What's his name?
Jethro Tull.
Yeah, the 1 foot fucking on the 1 foot fly. It's just like this isn't for me, but this artwork's badass.
Like Flirting with Disaster is okay, but it's not as good as this album cover is.
No, so I mean, you did get burned, but I mean, going through history, there's so many fantastic artists, female. Now they're finally getting their due, like the woman who designed the creature from Black Lagoon, that kind of stuff. I mean, we're finally seeing that. And that makes me happy. People of color are finally getting it. It sucks, like we talked about it, because we just did an episode of Women in Horror, and there's so many artists that are female that are still just on Pinterest or whatever. They haven't broken through, but they're there. It's great. And
one day it just takes one thing, and that's one thing that helps me. When you're an artist, you're always trying to, like, when is it going to fall through? When are they going to stop caring? All that bullshit. You're trying to hang on. Because sometimes you have those highs. And, when I would think about that, I was like, all these artists that I admire, like the Derek Riggs and the Ed Repkas and people like that, like when I think about them, like Matthew Peak, all that, like they have those pieces that people know, but like no one knows much outside of that.
Yeah.
So you start.
I'm not peeing. This is just a drink.
It just kind of, I said, I find comfort in that because
looks like pee.
And that's what I always tried to do. Like when I was doing Scream Factory, like this may be it, Nate. This may be what you're known for, and like just enjoy it. And because artists are always trying to get. They always had that horizon where I want to be, where I should be, and I'm fuck that. I'm not. No, I'm gonna enjoy every goddamn step of it, and that's what I do. So everything I do, I appreciate the opportunity, and I have to look at it that way. And I don't think. It may be what I remember for or not. I don't care. Like, because a lot of times we're remembered for the thing we don't want, like cherry. Like I always say, it's a cherry pie.
Oh no! R.I.P. dude. He's gone. He's dead now.
I hated that thing, but that's what he's known for. It's like, and you never
something
know.
he wrote in 5 seconds.
Yeah, and like you never know what's gonna click, and so you just kind of. But I'm like, these guys are still working. They just may not be doing Iron Maiden covers or Nightmare on Elm Street covers, but they're still legends and they're still good and they still have a lot. It's just like actors. Actors were great and then they just aren't popular anymore. No one's thinking about them until Tarantino comes along or Rob Zombie comes along and says, "Hey, you want to play a crazy clown, Sid?"
Yeah.
And all of a sudden,
seriously,
yeah. And it's so you just never know. And with art, I always say it's what it takes. It takes one phone call, it takes one email, it takes one person who was and that's the cool thing about the horror industry is that you kind of forget it sometimes. Like I worked with Derek Worley the artist,
Yeah.
makeup artist. You know, he just worked with me on my new film, and I love the guy. He's just great, and so super talented, super nice. And then like he's telling me that he had my shit on his walls and stuff, and like I gave him stuff, and he was
That's
excited.
weird.
And I went, really? And he's like, yeah. And I was like, oh yeah, you were 12 when I was doing Screen
Oh
Factory,
my God,
right?
yeah.
Oh, wow.
Or 13 or whatever. So it's like I don't think of it that you don't think of it that way, and I think that's probably how a lot of artists are. Like you don't realize I had that Iron Maiden poster on my wall, or I had all that, and like I've worshipped you for my whole life, and no matter where I go, I'll never reach your level. That kind of thing. Like I'll never
Wow.
be Bernie. I'll never be
Bernie writes
all
in
that.
there,
Yeah, I'll never be those guys. But like I have people say, "Oh, I put you on their level." I'm like, fuck bullshit. But there's some people like you don't know how they are touched or moved by what you do, and that's the cool thing about art. Is like you may never know. Like someone read your book or whatever. Somebody's listening to your podcast and like, man, I fucking love those guys. Nobody does good podcasts anymore. Like, these guys are fucking cool.
The goofs of Gore.
and that's kind of, you don't do it for that reason. You just do it because you love it. And but sometimes it kind of hits me where someone comes up like, oh, my girlfriend's over here and she's really nervous to meet you. I'm like, fuck. I'm like the shyest, quietest guy in the world. I'm like, why is she scared of me? I'm scared of her. And so I just really love the opportunity. I feel like I've done everything I wanted to do because I got to work for NECA, so I got to do the action figure stuff that I grew up, looking at G.I. Joe and Transformers. I got to do the movie. I make movies, make movie posters, magazine covers, book covers, album covers. So I fucking love being a freelancer. That's why I don't do the comics anymore, because like there's so much. Like if you're doing comics, that's it. You're stuck doing that for a year or two. Like when I did the Leslie Vernon comic.
I was going to bring that up.
Okay.
Behind the Mask. Yeah, that was supposed to be. People were pushing for a sequel to Behind the Mask, and a whole bunch of artists in different kind of mediums try to get together and try to make this happen. Can you tell a story about that? Because you were on the front lines.
Yeah, when they were trying to raise
We got
money,
a fucking action figure. Woohoo! That's what we got out of that.
yeah, they were trying to raise money in like 2011, 2012.
Yeah.
And I fucking love that movie.
Well, our friend now she goes by Sloan. Christy. Yeah.
Christy saw. I met Christy through. She was working for Fright Rags at the time.
Yeah. And she's working for Horror Hound too.
And Horror Hound. And she
For the convention side of it.
I did a taxi driver T-shirt for Rotten Cotton, I think. And she saw that and goes, "Well, fuck, that's one of the best shirts they've had," And she's like, "You should come over and work for Fright Rags." And so Ben hired me to do like a Jason Lives T-shirt. It was the first thing I did for Fright Rags.
Is that the one with the mask coming off, or which one is
Oh,
that?
that was for.
Because you have the
was for
Horror
a-
Hound cover. That's one of my favorite things when
Yeah.
you did the Jason League. We did an entire episode just on that movie.
I love that movie. It's
Yeah.
my favorite Friday movie.
Yeah.
The one you're talking about with the mask up was for an event at Alamo Draft House that Tommy was at.
Or well, fuck me. Go ahead.
Yeah, but the Horror Hound cover. But this one was it was the opening scene where Tommy. It's Jason standing above the grave with the rod and maskless behind him, and I think maybe Horseshack's hand coming. And I think Tommy's standing behind him, like, "Oh shit!"
You called him Harshack instead of Haas, because that's how he's going to be remembered for the rest of his life, no matter what he does.
So she told me about that they were trying to raise money. That was one of her favorite movies. She was obsessed with that and Popcorn and a few others. And as Nate said, she wears her loves on her sleeve very much. And so they were trying to raise money. So they said they'd contacted like me and Justin and a few other people to do artwork to try to for perks, I guess, for Indiegogo or Kickstarter, whatever it was they were doing. And so I was like, I fucking love those movies. So I offered to do a poster. So I did a poster, and I think it was part of it. And then they were at Horror Hound, and the only one they ever did in Columbus, I think, and got to hang out with the Fright Rags people and Nate and Scott Glosserman was there. So Nathan Basil and Scott Glosserman were there, and we hung out. We went to fucking Waffle House after the show. It was so funny because Scott is like totally LA energy, like he's like really just like, you know, I'm a slow Kentuckian, you know. He's like he's going off, and we're like at Waffle House at like 1 a.m. We got to be at the show Saturday morning at like 9-10 o'clock, and he's like, Raid the Redemption came out today.
Oh shit!
And we're like, oh yeah, that sounds cool. We should go see it.
Oh, that's perfect for him.
We're like, Scott, it's
His
1
speed.
a.m. I don't think it's playing. We're not in LA, you know. So, and what was really funny from that night was Nathan. Nathan always reminded me of Jim Carrey a little bit. Nathan Basil. And so in the car ride back to the hotel, he's doing Dumb and Dumber impersonations. As
Oh,
Jim
it's perfect.
Carrey.
His face, everything.
It was exact. And I just thought this is so funny because I always connected him to Jim, you know. But yeah, I did that artwork, and then, you know, of course it didn't happen, unfortunately. And then I think it was Scott that wrote me saying that they said, look, we wrote this script 9 years ago. We think it's probably out of date now. You know, because, you know, their movies were so timely. It's like, well, things have changed. Social media's changed. But we want to get it out there. So they said, we thought we'd do a comic book. And I'm like, I'm the realist. I'm like, you're not going to sell any of these. Scott, you're throwing your money away. He goes, you sound like my producers. let me worry about money. I was like, whatever. He goes, so I didn't want to do it. I was trying to talk myself out because I was like, I had just started making that Star Wars charity movie. I was director, writer, editor, everything. I was like, I don't know if I can do a comic book and direct and make this film, you know, at the same time.
You don't like ticks and sweat?
Oh God.
There's a whole story about Star Wars Hand of the Empire.
Yeah.
Go ahead, sorry.
I kept talking him out of it, man, and he said, no, you let me worry about it. And he goes, I really want you to do it. And I said, all right. So I agreed to do it. Well, actually, I threw him a I don't want to do it number, and he got it.
Oh, shit.
So I couldn't turn it down at that point.
Yeah.
So
Okay.
yeah,
Damn.
so I had to get it out, but it was really, you know, after I did, it's like, God, it's a difficult comic because they're mumblecore movies basically. So it's just a lot of people sitting around talking. And to draw that as a comic book, you know, like a 10-minute scene of people sitting around a table, to keep that interesting visually, and I'm having to draw the actors. I'm having to draw Nathan and Angela and Robert Englund, and
Yeah.
I mean that was fucking cool. And draw like before Scott Wilson passed away, I gave one of his panels to him I gave him the splash page when he first appears in the book. It was like right before he passed away. So I was like, well, it's an honor to draw those guys over and over and over, because Robert Englund's character and Scott Wilson's character had much larger parts.
I was going to say, this is the prequel to the movie, so, right?
It's actually a sequel. They called it. It was weird because it said
yeah.
It was called like it wasn't The Return. What was it?
Yeah, it was. It's
Was
the
it called
Return of Leslie
It's called
Vernon.
Before the Mask.
That's right.
Before
The Return. Yeah, and it wasn't a prequel. It was.
I thought that was a perfect way to describe it, though, because it's like,
it
what?
It was really it was just as good as the first movie. Really, I mean, it was like Taylor had become like the catch a predator type, but she was catching like serial killers, like Nathan Basil or Leslie Vernon characters.
Yeah.
So like there's this guy and he's breaking into the bedroom. He's about to kill these people. All of a sudden the lights come on and Taylor walks in with a camera. It's like, oh, you know,
Daylight NBC. You want to talk to me?
Sit down, have a cookie. Would you like some tea?
Yeah, no shit. What do you have in your pocket? Condoms and a knife? What could happen?
So that was clever. And then like they're making a movie based on the crimes, like the stab or whatever. But then Leslie reappears and he's being a consultant on it. And they're like, are you fucking crazy? This guy's, psychopath. It's really fun. And Loomis, or not Loomis, but England's character is Loomis, basically. He's on set. And they wanted the guy playing Robert Englund's character in the movie to be Bruce Campbell. So I had to draw him kind of like Bruce Campbell. And there's a great scene where, like,
that'd have been awesome.
They're just at, like, catering, and it's like they're having coffee, and they're looking at each other. And like Bruce Campbell would go, hi, I can't remember what his name was, Holleran, something like that. I think it was Holleran. He's like, hi, I'm Dr. Holleran. And England's supposed to be like, no, I'm Dr. Holleran. No, I am. Go back and forth.
It's very Scream 3.
Yeah.
My Gail would do this.
So it was a really fun script, really cool. Ends in a fucking bloodbath. I mean, it would have cost a lot of money. I can see why they didn't get the money, because to pay all the actors that they had, because they wanted. And if you look at the script or look at the comic, it's there. I'm not really ruining anything, but they wanted Tobin Bell to play Jigsaw. They wanted Kane Hodder to play Jason. They wanted I don't know if they didn't have anybody in mind for Michael, but there's a part where they're all at Eugene's playing poker in the basement, Jason and Mike. And
What was the budget on this? I forgot.
for the movie,
For what they were trying to get, yeah.
I don't remember.
Okay.
But it would have cost, because I mean, they're like the original movie is just like at a farmhouse.
Right.
Yeah.
This is a movie set, and they're at a hotel, and they would have cost a lot.
A little bit.
Hopefully we'll get it, because Nathan keeps talking about other possibilities, and maybe they're writing something new. David Steve does have a new short film called Wait For It or something.
Dave, can you look that up?
The writer of Leslie Vernon, the creator, he wrote actually, I think I did artwork for it a few years ago, but he's finally finished it. And he hasn't really put a lot out about it, but Nathan's been sharing stuff about it. But I think it's a short. And he had another really great idea for a slasher film. I got to read the script on it, and it didn't happen, but hopefully it does. But Dave's a really cool guy. And I've now read 4 of his scripts, and he's a really great writer, really creative guy. So I'm looking forward to this.
Well, good. I mean, we've talked about you. I mean, obviously, we're talking about horror artists and things that got us into the genre, but we're obviously focusing on you as well. And you're a filmmaker, and you've made a few good movies.
If you say so.
I think.
Yeah.
I think so.
I'm proud of them. Yeah, I mean, I've really fallen in love with filmmaking. In the last 2 or 3 years, I've really just kind of been trying to focusing on learning as much as I can, because I kind of fell into it as an artist and a writer. I didn't plan on ever being a filmmaker, although I loved film my whole life. So, like a lot of indie filmmakers, you just kind of go in without really knowing what you're doing, and then you kind of learn. And it was on the second time I was directing, I realized, I don't really know a whole lot about this. So I started, asking questions and studying, and so over the last 5-10 years, I try to absorb as much as I can, read as many books as I can, watch as many stuff as I can, and just I want to understand every aspect of it. And I've been an editor, I've been a writer, I've been director, I've been prop maker, I sculpted, I've done sound design. I've tried to learn all that stuff, because it's the only way to really be a good filmmaker. I think to me, the key to being a great filmmaker is editing, learning how to edit, because it tells you what you need and what you need to do on the set, and be prepared and do storyboarding. And so, but I also want to do everything. So, like, I took an acting class. I was like, well, a lot of my actors said I was, a good actor's director, but I'm like,
What was that like? Be a blob, Nathan. I've seen
Yeah,
those in movies. It's
I
like,
know.
that can't be
I
what it's
expected
like.
that. It wasn't that. It
Okay.
was, I took an acting class, and it made me, if anything, it made me a better writer, it made me a better director, it made me better. I said, I just want to be able to know how. You have to communicate. That's what your job is, and you have to be able
Knowing
to
their
understand what there are.
perspective.
Yeah. So you need to know everyone's job. You don't need to do it, but you need to know it well enough to have the vocabulary and know how to give them what they need to do your job, do their job. And so the more I know about effects art, or costuming, or prop making, cinematography, whatever, the more I know about the lenses and the filters and all that. So I took a Hollywood camera course, teaches you everything that Hollywood does, how they film everything, all their shots, all the everything I could possibly learn. And then for the last year, I've just been watching HBO put up like all the Janus films. I've just been watching all of that, all the great Italian and French and German and Russian, Japanese films from the silent era all the way up to the current.
Holy shit.
And just I've watched, Passion of Joan of Arc and Bicycle Thieves and all the Ozu films and every Kurosawa film and all that, just watching and trying to understand why they were great and paying attention to their blocking and their pacing and their everything.
Everybody rips off Akira.
Yeah.
Everybody. Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
Hey, did you find that? The creator thing?
Yes. No, well, the movie was Wait for It. He said.
Oh, okay. Well, fuck me in the
Is
face.
that what it is?
Yeah.
Okay. Good
You
guess.
had it.
Yeah. I got it right. Dave Steve, great guy. Got to hang out with them in L.A. That was I got to, all these little fun things like the Dark Delicacies. I went out there and we signed the comic book, and Angela and Dave and a few other people were there. And that was the first time I'd ever been to L.A., so I got to go to the Elm Street house and all the Halloween.
Yeah, I saw your pictures, you bastard. look, I'm in Pasadena. Fuck off.
Go to the Halloween house. They're like, get away from my fucking bush.
Yeah, he took a picture of like him on the stoop in front of the
That's the coolest thing. Like the owners are cool with it. They actually leave jack-o'-lanterns out or pumpkins out on their porch and say, yes, this is the house from Halloween. Feel free to take all the photos you want. Use our pumpkins. Just please return them.
Yeah.
Well, when you buy something like that, like the people that bought the Goonies house recently, and they're just so pissed off that people are coming there. They actually put a sign that says "No Goonies Allowed."
That was like a neighbor, wasn't it?
It's
like there was like a neighbor. Yeah. The person that has it's cool with it. It's like person 2 houses down put up like "No Goonies," like you said,
What a bunch
and then
of
the person
assholes.
in the middle. I think they like fuck that guy or don't listen to this.
Oh, that's even better. Yeah, don't let me buy the Amityville house, man. I'd be like, come on in, bitches, let's do this.
It's just going to be a silent disco.
Yeah, they do those tours now at the Mocker House, the Stu Mocker House from Scream. I follow the guy who plays Ghostface, and now Waddell just did a photo op there and did signings. The original Ghostface guy, so they get it.
Yeah.
Just take some time a little bit because we had Nate Reagan on the podcast last year, and he worked on 4 and 5 of Scream, and then he's coming back after this new Scream drops, and and he talked about they were the first people to do a actual Scream party at the Stu Mocker House, and now it's being used as a tourist attraction because the people are like, nobody cares. It's like, are you fucking kidding me?
Yeah.
Horror fans, man, we'll just. I mean, like I said, people make fun because I do the film location thing because it's just kind of like a scavenger hunt, especially if it's something that's not like. Of course, you can find the Elm Street house or whatever, but like the one when I geek out, it's like when I find like the alleyway from Halloween 2 or
With the X on the
or
on the pole.
Like when I found the alleyway in Reservoir Dogs where they had to shoot out with the cops, I was like walking. I was like, I probably could have been killed in that alleyway because it was the neighborhood. I'm in like L.A. somewhere. I don't know where the fuck I'm walking in alleys.
Yeah,
and like I'm walking through that whole thing, like where they do the jack and everything, and I'm like, that's the cool shit.
That is.
Yeah, and like that's when I get excited. Like I just found out today, like I just saw Some Came Running. It's a Frank Sinatra, Dean Martin, Shirley MacLaine movie that's like one of Richard Linklater's favorite movies. And I just watched it like a week ago. Found out it was shot in Madison, Indiana.
Oh.
So I'm like, oh, fuck. I'm making a trip over. It's like an hour away, So
Well, it's like me and my wife, we went to Maine and then drove up to Stephen King country up there. And then I found... There's the cemetery, not the Pet Cemetery, but the scene in Pet Cemetery where Stephen King is there and he's the preacher doing whenever she dies. I found the exact spot where Stephen King stood in that movie, and I was like, here we are right here. Stephen King is right in this one place. And so we took a picture right there in this one little spot.
And your wife's like, get in the car.
And Ace is digging up Earth.
the cemeteries are the fun because you get those chills, but you're like, people. I mean, they have to see it all day long. Because, I mean, I've been to, like, the cemeteries in the Halloween movies. Or
Evans City. From, like, Night of the Living Dead.
Yeah, Night of the Living Dead. I was just there, like, we went to Pittsburgh to go to Monroeville and all that. And, yeah, it's like, you can't believe you're there. Like, you've seen this movie so much.
Yeah.
And you're actually like, oh, my God, it's still there. It still looks the same. And
I'm going where they filmed Death Tunnel. I think it's going to be really cool.
Oh.
What? It's got a great soundtrack. Fuck, man. We got to get off track of talking about horror artists, but I mean, we really wanted to talk to you anyway, so it was a trick.
Well, I was like shooting the shit. Like my daughter, before she goes, "What are y'all going to talk about?" Because I do our own podcast. We just talk about movies. She goes,
Yeah,
what
you
y'all
do.
talk about? I was like, I guess we're talking about me. I just want to skip it.
Nice. Yeah. And
I said we're going to get on to something else.
eventually.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's hard to have someone like you on the podcast and not talk about your career. And we talk a little bit about the. I mean, this is not a goddamn Star Wars podcast, but talk about the Hand of the Empire, because that's actually an important thing that you did for charity.
Yeah. Like after we did Top Gun, we.
Oh yeah. We did a movie together. I forgot about that.
After me and Steve did The Confession of Fred Krueger, which was a passion project that I had done Volumes of Blood 1 and became friends with David Bennell, who was a cinematographer on that, and Kevin Roach, who was one of my stars in it. And the three of us just gelled really quickly, and we need to make another movie. We're on the set going, we need to make another movie. And I said, well, I have this Elm Street thing I wrote for fun, a prequel. And Kevin would make the perfect Fred Krueger. And I was like, if I don't make this movie with him, so we made that.
You can find The Confession of Fred Krueger on YouTube for free.
Yeah, you can. and when you make fan films, it comes with a stigma, and I didn't want to be the fan film guy because everybody said, why don't you come up with your own shit? Come up with something original. Like, dude, I've like put out like 15 comic books, and like I've made other films. Like I've made 8 films, and like 6 of them were originals, and I've got tons of other stories to make. So it kind of pisses me off. So I was like, I ain't doing any more fucking fan films. Never more. I'm still proud of the movie because I really love the movie, and I think a lot of people did.
I saw it at the
I bled
premiere.
for that fucker thing. I bled for that fucking movie.
Literally bled.
Stabbed myself on the shoulder.
I still have the poster from it.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
But yeah, I had sworn them off, and I was trying to make On a Dark and Bloody Ground, which is my latest film, which is in post right now. But I hadn't made a feature in a while. Wish for the Dead was my first directing job, or first thing I directed. And that was the last feature I'd done. I'd done all these anthologies and shorts. And so I really wanted to make On a Dark and Bloody Ground. And, when I get into something, I just get into it. So I didn't plan on being that involved, but I just started writing, or I just started pouring out. And I sent them the stuff, and they were loving it. And so I'm getting in there and I'm writing, and I'm like, gosh, this just doesn't feel right. And I'm like, wow. I was like, I don't think you can make Star Wars and Band of Brothers together. I think it has to feel like, this doesn't feel like Star Wars. It feels like Band of Brothers with stormtroopers in it.
Yeah.
And so I said, Star Wars just has a certain type of writing, a certain type of dialogue, a certain, you got to have those classic things, or otherwise it just doesn't feel right. So that's when I said, well, all these movies are about, they're usually chasing something or protecting something. They got the plans of the Death Star, or they got BB-8.
The
or
MacGuffin.
Yeah, they got that MacGuffin thing.
Yeah.
Well, and I said, we don't have any women in this either. We have no female characters. And I'm a big Mara Jade fan. And I said, no, has anyone done Mara Jade? Like, she's not been in any films. That way we can cast anybody. It doesn't matter what she looks like.
I don't think she'd even been animated at that point.
No. And so I said, why don't we make it young Mara Jade? Because I know we want to do it before A New Hope, if Kanan's in it or whatever. And most of the costumes they have are that era. They don't have, the New Order or whatever, First Order. I said, so let's make it pre-New Hope. Let's make Mara Jade about 15, 14. And Kanan is protecting her from the stormtroopers, but the stormtroopers are there for her, blah, blah, blah. And so I wrote that. That's why it's called Hand of the Empire, because she was the Emperor's hand. And so, yeah, it just through doing all this, I became the director. And I ended up editing
Yeah, like you
it.
didn't see that coming.
Yeah, I ended up doing it, like doing a lot of stuff and building sets. But I loved it because I got to learn a lot, because I got to do things I'd never done as a horror filmmaker.
Yeah.
Like building stuff, doing. We went old school. We bought the little models and we did the ships flying for real, like stop motion kind of stuff. And we tried to do it as old school as we could, because I hate CGI stuff. I hate that look. We still have some in there for the lightsabers and the blasts and all that. But I don't like when I see fan films of Star Wars and I see it all that, if you can't do digital art as good as they do it, it just looks bad, you know?
Yeah, it's the Mummy.
It's like a
Windows everywhere.
So
It's like a Windows 95 screensaver.
So I told him, let's just fucking, let's just buy the models and make them and do it the way they did them, you know? And so I got to learn that stuff, which was very beneficial. But I do remember making the film kind of like, I miss horror because I love the atmosphere. Because you can't do that in Star Wars. Like horror, there's so much you can do just to create an atmosphere that just, you feel it when you're watching it. And I missed working in that genre, making Star Wars. Like, I love Star Wars. I don't think I'd want to make Star Wars movies. I don't think I want to make big action sci-fi movies.
Right.
Yeah.
There was a thing I remember at the premiere that I remember, and obviously I still remember it like it was yesterday. There was a woman who stood up and she was like, "That's fucking Star Wars." She probably didn't curse, but she should have.
I think she may have.
I can't remember because at that time people were upset because obviously George Lucas sucks.
Yeah.
I'm sorry, that shit was awful. And then in Rogue One, it was kind of dividing, but that at that premiere, it was at was it Stony Brook? Okay, Escape. And then she was like, "That's fucking Star Wars." Like, she was so happy.
She stood up and went, "That was fucking Star Wars."
That's it.
And afterwards, I had no idea who that was.
Yeah.
And Don West, who's from the 501st, said, "Do you know who that lady was?" I was like, "No." She goes, "She runs like all the Star Wars, like she's like #1 fan in Louisville, Star Wars fan, like runs all these different organizations and
Wow.
And I'm like, well, shit, we just got the seal of approval for
Yeah,
that.
you did. You just got a Stephen King most ferocious
And
horror
I
film
felt
ever.
it did. I thought we did all right, and you know,
It's all right.
it's all right. So yeah, I'm really proud of it just because of why we did it, and because of why we did it, you know, they write me every once in a while. "Oh, we're up to like almost 2 million views," and I'm like, that's cool, but I don't pay attention to it because it's not why I made it. You know, like we raised the money. I was at Norton's when we handed them the check. You know, the big
It's still
thing.
nice.
That's very cool. It's still nice to have made a Star Wars movie. We definitely had fun. Again, I learned a lot about filmmaking. I learned a lot of things that I didn't know before I made it.
That's the good thing, is what we learned along the way.
You softy.
I've just learned if I really wanted to get a movie made, I'd just bring Nathan in and be like, so I'm working on this script. Maybe you can, just fucking direct it.
Right. He'll throw out that impossible number and
Don't
you'd be like,
tempt me.
You just got to make it something interesting, sir.
it's not a fan film.
I just love it so much that I just, I just get wrapped up in it. I'm like, God, I want to do this. I really want to. I just love the challenge because I've been drawing my whole life, and filmmaking is an art that you'll just, like Greta Gerwig said, it's something you'll never master, and that's the exciting thing. Even Martin Scorsese, when he faces a new script, is like, I got to figure out how to do this, even though he's been doing it for 60, 70 years.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
it's like, I
Seems
still
like it.
have a challenge to do,
Yeah.
and that's what's cool about it. You may know it, but there's still, like Robert Eggers said something, no, you didn't mention the Northman, but
I could have, but I didn't.
somebody else earlier today was talking about Northman, and I losing time here. But Robert Eggers said when they finished that movie, Ethan Hawke came up, like patted him on the back and said, "Well, guys, how's it feel? You've made it. You've proved it that you can make this movie." He goes, "Yeah, we finally figured out how to make this movie now." But we didn't know then.
No
Like,
shit.
now we know, but now we got to figure out how to make the next one.
Yeah.
Yeah, he's the perfect person to do the Nosferatu movie.
yeah.
He's doing the Nosferatu, and I saw that Willem Dafoe is signed on to do something. I don't know what he's going to do.
I wonder if he's going to be like the Renfield type character.
Maybe.
But I think it would be a mistake to make
Yeah,
him.
I think The Lighthouse, like movies like that, they're gorgeous.
He's the perfect guy to do it,
Yeah.
and he's been obsessed to do it since he was a kid.
You need to do the Large Marge stop motion animation movie.
Don't tempt me.
It was a night just like this night. But let's get back to the horror before we get out of here.
Okay.
Let's talk about the movie that's in post right now.
On Dark and Bloody Ground.
Please.
This started as a possible script for Volumes of Blood 2. The first Volumes of Blood did well.
It
I'm
blew the fuck up.
I was, and a lot of that's PJ's he's just a whore for publicity. Like, he just pushed that thing so much, got so many reviews.
We had PJ as a guest. We did the Felissa Rose event, in December, and I pulled him up on stage, and he talked about his newest movie. But yeah, he is. He knows how to push it.
Yeah, he knows how to sell, and that's needed. A lot of artists, we don't know how to sell ourselves, and he doesn't have that shame of like he'll just go out and do it, and you need that guy. And so Volumes of Blood got a lot of ground because of that, and I'm really proud of that movie, Encyclopedia Satanica. The segment I did, it sparked the filmmaker, because after I made Wish for the Dead, I didn't think I'd ever do it again. And then he said, "You want to direct a segment in this movie?" I was like, "Absolutely." And so that's when I felt like I finally did what I had in my head and what I wanted.
Yeah. Well, Volumes of Blood is now on top 10 lists of best horror anthologies of all time. Like, that's fucking insane.
It's cool.
Whether you've noticed that or not.
I haven't noticed.
I have.
So when we were doing the second one, I said, well, what are we going to do? And he said, we can do anything you want. So I was like, all right, I got to go to my well. Like, what have I written? And back in high school, I wrote like 20 short horror stories. And there were two that I pulled from. I was like, I can combine these, because the one I liked had a young college student, and I was like, I'm tired of independent films just being made by young people, starring young people. I want a middle-aged character.
You need a Kurt Russell.
I need a Kurt Russell. And so I said, well, there's this other story I had that was kind of a werewolf story that had an old sheriff, middle-aged sheriff in it, that was inspired by my grandfather. So I was like, well, I'll put that character in the lead, and I blended them together and wrote this thing called Dark and Bloody Ground, because when I heard Hunter Thompson talk about the Dark and Bloody Ground, Kentucky, as I always wanted to make a Kentucky folklore, country, southern fried horror film, because I love when Stephen King would do it. I love Pet Sematary. I love Cujo. I love those
small he's
small
about
town.
Maine, what he knows.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I always loved that about those particular Stephen King movies, when it was those small country towns, or like John Saul's books, Nathaniel's, he would write about little small towns like that, ghost stories. And, the independent thing is, there's so much slasher this, slasher that. And I'm like, I don't want to make a slasher movie. So I was like, let's just do this. This is something different. And I wrote it, and as I wrote it, like, I don't know, because it was really kind of a third act, the whole short. And I was like, there's more story here, and I don't want to kind of waste it on an anthology film. Like, I think there's a feature there. So I kept it, and I started writing other stuff for Volumes of Blood 2. I did the Christmas segment and the opening with Warren. Warren, that was the first time we worked together. So as I was doing that and the Star Wars thing, I was writing Dark and Bloody Ground. And I went back to the other stories I had, and I was able to say, all right, we can begin the movie with this other story I had. And I'll kind of tell you what this one was. This one goes back to when I was a little kid. The movie's set in 86 because I wanted to set it, because a lot of these stories came from that time. My family comes from Grayson County. I've always lived in Louisville. Well, I live in Shelbyville now, but for those who don't know, Grayson County is like very rural Kentucky. And so I would visit there every now and then, because my great-grandparents still lived there, and my aunt moved down there with her family, and my cousins were down there. And so I would spend the weekend with my cousins, and they were a little older than me, Cass and James, and cousins try to scare the younger kids. So they lived on a house that was on a crossroads, and there was nothing like tobacco fields, and there was no other houses. And they told me that there was a vampire that lived in the tobacco field. I'm like 5, 6 years old.
That's somewhere you can find him hear his coughing.
Yeah,
Sing. All right, I'm done.
That's great. Whatever, Dave. Yeah, that's your coughing the vampire, and it's a fucking tobacco smoking vampire.
So I wrote a story called The Tobacco Man. You can see it in the trailer. They talk about Tobacco Man, and so that's how the movie starts. Is this cousin spending the night in a tent with his older cousin, and his cousin tells him the story to scare him. But is it real or not? Does it really happen? So that's kind of what the movie is. But it's not just the horror and folklore and ghost stories. I like the whole campfire story horror that I don't feel was happening. And I was writing this before Stranger Things and It came out, you know. So like this is almost, I'm sure when it comes out, people are like, oh, it's another ripoff of Stranger Things. But it's because I was kind of pulling from the same thing. I was pulling from Stephen King and Spielberg.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
And because that's what I grew up with. And so that's what I remember the 80s. Like, people talk about the slashers. I'm like, Stephen King was like God in the 80s. Like, it was his heyday.
Fucking Cujo and Salem's Lot and all that stuff.
We're reading all those novels. We're seeing all those movies. And I don't think people think of that right away when they think about 80s horror. They think about the slashers. They think about all the other stuff. But, like, Stephen King kind of was a big... I mean, The Shining and Pet Sematary and Cujo and Christine and all that.
Yeah, you put his name on a title, it's going to sell.
Yeah. And I kind of missed that. And, again, it wasn't... When I was writing this, that wasn't out. It wasn't... Stephen's career... They weren't making Stephen King movies, really. Now they're just making them... Again, this is 2015.
They didn't win another Langoliers, man.
It was actually... I actually was writing this right before we made Confession.
Oh, no shit. Damn.
Yeah.
What the hell's wrong with you? How did it take so long?
Because I was making all these other fucking movies.
Yeah.
And a Leslie Vernon comic.
Oh, you're busy. Go ahead.
I was
Charity
doing it.
work.
Yeah, charity.
I was doing charity work.
For the children.
I was doing it for children. I sacrificed. But yeah, but I also... one of the themes of the film that was real important to me is I always talk about when you're in the horror industry, you're always asked, like, what scares you? What are you afraid of? And so, well, that changes. When you're a kid, you know, we're all scared of the dark, the boogeyman, what's under the bed, what's in the closet, blah, blah, blah. But as an adult, the thing that scares me is, you know, loss, death, losing your child, or dying before, you know, when your child needs you, that kind of thing. Like, that stuff scares the shit out of me. And so I wanted to make a movie about fatherhood because that's, my daughter is everything to me. And that's really all I think about. And I want to protect her. And I that's what I fear, all these things that could happen. And so to me, the movie's about fatherhood. And a lot of the characters, a lot of those stories were based on my father or my grandfather. So in many ways, the movie's based on my family in some ways, or the characters are inspired by just fatherhood in general and what's scary. But so the main characters are kind of like a young kid, a guy's like in his mid-30s, and a sheriff who's 50, 55. So it's like these almost three generations, almost. When we cast, I ended up going with a younger actor for the sheriff because he was just fantastic. But originally it was supposed to be like father or son, father, grandfather kind of thing. And so the little boy, when you watch him, it's like watching E.T. or Cujo with the little boy scared of the dark, the closet, all those things.
Annoying as fuck.
But it's like,
I get it. You're dying.
Yeah.
As long as it's
You
not
can't.
like
You need some water, fucker.
Oh, yeah.
No.
So capturing that stuff that scared us as kids, you know, the boogeyman, all that kind of stuff, and then a father character who loses a child and what that does to you. And I didn't want to do. It almost plays like a revenge story, but it's not revenge. He's lost. He doesn't know what he wants. Like, what do I do now? Like, I failed at my job. My child died. What do I do? And so he's going through this, and he doesn't know what to do other than to try to find resolution, which is to find what the fuck killed my kid. And not in a revenge way, but in I don't know what else to do other than this. How do I fix what's missing or what's hurting? And then the sheriff is hiding. He's more of like, I got to control this town. I got to be the leader. I got to protect my people. I got to stick onto my faith. I'm small town Kentucky, 1980s. So it's really much a drama, but a supernatural murder mystery folklore Kentucky movie. It's really what it is.
That's awesome. When is that going to hit? When is that going to drop? What? Not hit.
Yeah, I don't know.
It says in post, so I mean, it's getting there.
I have it done. Right now, it's just in I got to get the audio mixed and cleaned up and get a score. Joe Stockton's supposed to do the score. It's taken a long time. It's a big movie. It's a big epic, and it's set in the 80s. We didn't have a big budget. We kind of paid for it out of pocket kind of thing. And so trying to make a period movie with like 40 characters in a little town.
Wow, well, that was terrifying to have to direct all those people.
It was not all at once, but but it's a 2.5 hour film, and because it has 2 different storylines going on in it. And when we started in October of 2019. And then in January, we lost our DP. So then we were trying to find another DP. We ended up just shooting it ourselves. But we lost that month. So then we started shooting again in February. And then, of course,
there's this thing called COVID.
COVID happened.
Oh, COVID.
Yeah.
And we had no idea what the fuck's going to happen. And I shut it down immediately because I was like, I'm not risking anybody's life for a fucking independent film, little film. And we didn't shoot for another 7 months, I think, to the point where, and when we came back, I was trying to keep it safe where it was just me and Ken shooting. Like the crew was like me and Autumn barefoot, and like I kept the crews as small as possible, so there was less people there. Everybody wore a mask. And you change the way you filmed. Like I would have, because some of the actors were worried, so I was like, there was a little boy. One of the first things we did was a little boy, and he's being cradled by his mother, and so I was like, all right, normally I would shoot this in a medium shot, but we're going to do it in a single. So I shot her while he has his mask on. I shot her while she has her mask on to keep everybody, calm. And
that sounds like a nightmare.
It was hard. And that's the first thing, like, because we're like, what are we going to shoot? I was like, well, there's a lot of scenes where it's just one actor, so we can fucking do that. Right?
Yeah.
They're not in danger. It's like me and the camera guy.
It's like Popcorn when they refilmed everything with Jill.
So that's what we did. Start early, shortly to the point where we started to feel. We always stayed careful. Everyone wore masks and all that, but gradually people started to get more comfortable. And luckily no one ever caught it or anything on set, but. It just took a long time, and then there was just, there's creature effects. We had to build, again, it was just all this stuff that had to be done. And then, availability, because once COVID lifted, all these people had all these projects that they needed to film or wanted to get together. So, all of a sudden your DP is off shooting another movie, or your actors are committed to another thing.
Yeah.
So trying to get everybody, the biggest scary thing was I had so many kids in the movie. I'm like, are they going to hit puberty during COVID? And one kid did.
Jill's voice is broken.
Yeah. Oh, one kid did. Like the little kid, when he shot it, he's like little kid, and like he came to do his ADR because we needed. Hello. Can I tell you about the tobacco man? I'm like, shit. And then I said, can you take it? Little bit of treble in there, he would find a middle ground, and I'm like, okay, no one's ever gonna know that's not his voice, because he was just at that 12, 13 point where he could have that voice,
a little cracky.
He didn't have a little more cracky than. He wasn't talking like a DJ or anything. He was, he's
WNBC.
But yeah, that's a movie. I think it's the best thing I've made. Again, because it. Just all this again. You want it to be better than what you did before, and doing Star Wars, I learned all those other movies I learned, and then while I was off and waiting, I was just hitting the books and hitting everything, trying to absorb as much as I could to go. All right, how can I make this better while I'm not doing anything? And the first thing I did with COVID was just relax. That was fucking great because I was like, as a professional artist or filmmaker, it's like I always owe something. And I didn't know anything because I hadn't taken any art jobs because I had been making the film.
Oh.
So I just said, I think I'm just going to paint for myself for once. And I remember, I don't know if you've watched the videos, I was doing like live painting. I would just get up in the morning and I'd open the window and I'd have the wind coming in and the birds and shit. And I'd just sit on my kitchen table and paint. And it was peaceful. And I would just put like my live video feed on Facebook.
The Bob Ross of horror.
I was being Bob Ross of horror.
There's a little slasher in the corner over there.
And I did a Jaws piece, a No Country for Old Men piece, and a Shining piece.
Yeah.
A watercolor. And
did you do the Jaws piece for the cover? Because I know you did a cover piece for Horror Hound.
That was Horror Hound. Yeah, that was before that. That was years ago. Yeah, that was actually that's cool because Nicotero bought that from me.
You're right, Nicotero.
Yeah,
from K&B. Nice.
Yeah. He was. He was at Wonderfest.
Yeah,
and
he's coming back.
Oh, he loves that show.
Yeah.
He said it's the only show he gets to like walk around. No one fucks with him. Like I just get to enjoy it.
Yeah.
And you know, he actually wrote me out of the blue one day. He had caught on to the Mondo thing, and he somehow
the company,
landed,
right?
Yeah.
Okay.
And he somehow landed on my website when it was running, when it was good. And he said,
5 years ago.
I just spent like 2 hours on your website. And he goes, I'd like to commission you some artwork. And I was really busy at the time. I was like, fuck. I was like,
oh, he was? I was like, yeah, you fucking made him The Walking Dead for the last 8 years.
yeah. I mean, I was real busy. He was about to go
okay.
film The Walking Dead.
Yeah.
Like, I think it was the first episode of one season 3 or something. And but it was really cool because I was just about to do the Day of the Dead cover. I said, oh, yeah, I'm doing the Day of the Dead.
Which you did the effects on with Thomas Milliner.
Yeah. And he's like, oh, you need any images? I got like thousands of Polaroids I can send you.
Oh, my God.
Wow, that's awesome.
Scans of, and I'm not going to bother you that way. But when I finally met him, it was right after I did that Jaws post. I knew how big of a fan he was. And I said, hey, it's me, Nate. He goes, oh, how you doing? I said, yeah, I know you love Jaws. I just did that Jaws poster. He goes, oh, that cover. He goes, you still got that? And luckily I'm in Louisville. You know, luckily it was a show and looks like it's at home. He goes, how much you want for it? You know, and we bought it from
That's
me.
amazing.
And then a few years later, I was at Wonderfest and he was there, and I had a funny moment with him then because I had I was with my daughter and I was introducing her to him, and my phone goes off and my ringtone was the Gonk song from Dawn of the Dead.
Oh my God.
And he just goes, is that your ringtone?
For real?
Yeah. I'm like, yeah. He goes, why didn't I never think of that?
God damn. And look at him now, man. When I met him in 1998 at Wonderfest, and he had hair back then.
Long, yeah.
Long hair, like Rennie Harlan of horror. But yeah. And look at him now, man. Holy shit. I mean, he's always been amazing.
Oh, yeah.
But like, yeah, God damn.
Yeah, he's incredible, and so humble and nice and down to earth.
That's what's amazing about that guy.
Yeah.
We did a live commentary to Black Roses last year at Wonderfest with Frank Dietz.
Yeah.
And now he's coming back and we're doing Rock and Roll Nightmare.
Yeah.
And it's the same thing. All these guys are just amazing.
Yeah, Frank's awesome.
He is.
Yeah,
he's so
he's
great. Yeah. My daughter works for Wonderfest now. She's been working there like 10 years. I just like, this is the guy who worked on Hercules for Disney. And she's like, what? Here's her clamshell. She still has it. Like these people are amazing.
Yeah, I mean the stuff he worked on. Because I remember talking to Wonderfest when, like, before Mary Poppins the sequel came out. He's like, I got to do the penguins, man. He goes, that's what I wanted to do. I was like, that's awesome.
Yeah, man. And that's what I love about Wonderfest. It's like nerd.
Yeah.
Like, this is the guy who did the animation for Creepshow. Like I met him there.
Yeah.
Things like that.
That was the first one I ever went to was Wonderfest, and yeah, it's like I mean, I don't remember the guy's name because it was an effects artist. Him and his brother did effects, and they were working on the House on Haunted Hill remake.
Oh wow, I can't remember.
And they were there, and I was at that time I had my first tempting of like maybe getting into the industry, film industry some way as an artist, a concept artist, storyboard artist, whatever. And I just went up to the guy and like, I guess I was 23 or so, and I just said hi and was telling him what my interests were, and he said, well, come on, sit down, you know, and he just had me sit down and talk to me for like an hour,
yeah,
you know, and that's what Wonderfest is like, because it is laid back, and it is, but they're artists, and there's no bullshit, like it's just, we're just like you guys, we're geeks, we love this.
And they're sitting around other artists.
Yeah.
We've talked about the Tingler, they did the live Tingler with Bob Burns, and John Goodwin, who worked on the fucking thing with John Carpenter, you know?
Yeah.
I actually filmed a piece of him doing special makeup effects at Wonderfest last year, just for like him and Bo Kalen.
And you said you were at the Bernie Wrightson when we were there. And
Yeah.
There were like 5 people in the room. We didn't know each other then.
No, we didn't.
We were talking about like, yeah, I was there when he was drawing with the Sharpie and drawing the monster.
And that guy asked the stupidest question of like, you know, this is a really good, but I mean, he was talking about he didn't understand what the Frankenstein monster looked like. And then the entire crowd was like, well, the 5 of us were like, oh my God. He just asked the master of horror art about his friend. You know, this is a nice interpretation.
Doesn't look like Boris.
This is the ultimate interpretation of Frankenstein. You're watching a master who's now dead. And God, that sucks. Yeah. Well, let's not get sad about that.
No.
But thank you for coming on the show.
That's
Dave,
fun.
you guys have anything you want to poke him with?
No, I think he's answered it all.
We covered it all.
Yeah, I know. We went from horror art to just the Nate show. So, but thank you for coming on the show. We can't wait for Dark and Bloody Ground to be released.
I can't either. Maybe you guys could tell me when.
Yeah, it's gonna be great. Cute.
I'll call you in 2 years.
Yeah,
And then this back shit happened, so like that,
Yeah, you just
that
had
put
back
me on
surgery.
hold.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's been a big thing because I was like, I can't sit at a computer desk right now. Right now, I'm finally getting it. I had to have the surgery because it was just something that was unavoidable, and I tried not to do it. And I'm like, I know if I didn't get the surgery, I was like, I may not be able to walk around, and it was one of those things where your back could go any minute, kind of thing, where you may not walk.
No, screw that.
So so I was like, no, because we went to Pittsburgh. That's when I made this decision. Went to Monroeville Mall. We got into Pittsburgh. I went straight there, and I walked around for 20 or 30 minutes, and my back started hurting real bad. And I was like, if I can't walk around a fucking mall for 20 or 30 minutes.
With all the adrenaline of being in that mall.
Yeah. It was so funny, too, because I was fucking, my wife and daughter don't give a shit. So, like.
Okay, Dad, let's go see their nerd stuff.
Like, we're going to the bathroom, right? And they go straight to the bathroom, and then they come out, and I go, do you realize this is the hallway?
Yeah.
This is the hallway. Like, what hallway? Like, the hallway where they went down to hide.
Drive all of it.
Whatever, Dad, we're going to, the clothing stores.
Oh, my God. Galen Ross probably shit in that stall. But, fuck, man. Thank you for coming on the show. Dave, if you want to get us out of here.
Yes, thank you for everybody for listening. You can find us on Anchor FM, Breaker, Google Podcast, Overcast, Pocket Cast, Radio Public, Spotify, Apple Podcast, Castbox, and Verbal.com, and where you're listening to us now. And you can also see our faces on YouTube and Facebook. And thanks.
Bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.
Oh, I've had to piss for an hour.
Yeah. Everybody turn off their mics, please.